The three biggest energy retailers in Australia are Origin Energy, AGL Energy, and Energy Australia. Now, Energy Australia sounds pretty Aussie, but is actually being sold off to a Hong Kong energy company back in 2011, so it isn't listed on the ASX. So today, we're going to look at the two publicly listed companies, Origin Energy and AGL Energy, to see the difference between the two in terms of the power plants, market share, the company financials, and their future plans. And where possible, I'll try and include Energy Australia as well if they have any company information that's available to the public. Now, let's get started. Origin Energy formed when it de-merged from Boral Limited in 2000. It owns a total of 13 power plants varying from fossil fuels like coal and gas to renewables like hydroelectric and solar. In total, it can generate 6,000 megawatts of energy, which is 13% of the national power generation capacity. Almost half of its energy generation comes specifically from its Eraring coal power plant in Dora Creek, New South Wales, which is Australia's biggest power stations, and one of the oldest as well, being commissioned all the way back in 1982. It's meant to have a life of 50 years, so it only has a lifespan of another decade before it is decommissioned in favour of a huge battery plant. But I'll go into more details on this later in the video. AGL used to stand for Australian Gas Light Co. and is one of the oldest companies around. It also operates coal, gas, hydroelectric plants and solar farms, but it also has a number of wind farms as well, making them deeper in renewables than Origin Energy. They currently own and operate 12 power plants for a total of 8,500 megawatts of power, with most of that coming from the Bayswater Power Station in the Hunter region of New South Wales. This is a coal power plant that burns coal supplied from the Mount Arthur coal mine, which is owned by BHP. From this same mine, coal is also supplied to the Liddell power plant, which is set to close in 2022. But again, more on that later in this video. Energy Australia used to be a state-owned company until it and all of its assets were bought out by Hong Kong CLP Group. 90% of its power generation is from 5 coal and gas plants, with the final 10% generated by 6 separate wind farms. The biggest power plant is the Yallourn Power Station in Victoria, which outputs around half of either Origin or AGL's biggest power plant. Altogether, Energy Australia generates about 5,000 megawatts of electricity. In terms of market share, Origin Energy leads the big three with 28% of the electricity market. AGL is not far behind at 21% of the market share, and Energy Australia brings up the rear at 16%. Together, they count for 65% of the energy supply for Australia, with all the other retailers comprising of the remaining 35% are spread over more than 20 different energy providers. So the big three are well and truly in front. This is very similar to how the big four banks are positioned over the smaller banks in Australia. For the gas market though, AGL leads with almost 38% of the market, followed by Origin with 27%. Energy Australia is again placed third at 19% market share. This is even more of a triopoly, with the big three providers making up 85% of the market. In terms of the actual energy prices for the consumer, at the time of recording this video, all three companies have pretty much the identical prices. The only point of differentiation then is each of the company's marketing budget and pretty much the pushiness of those door-knocking people who earn commissions when they encourage you to change providers. Let's go through the company financials. As always, the best thing to look at when you're short on time is the underlying EBITDA, which is the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. This is the most important metric because a company's value comes from its ability to earn money, and EBITDA shows this while excluding all of the things that are outside of the company's control. For Origin, their underlying EBITDA has declined by 7% since last year to $1.46 billion due to the lower demand and therefore lower wholesale electricity prices as a result of the global pandemic. The gas performance has also suffered, with EBITDA down 8% since last year to $1.74 billion as a result of the price of natural gas being down 10%. This is obviously a disappointing result for Origin, but there's almost nothing that they can do about it. The cost of energy generation is relatively fixed, so its profit margins are pretty much completely at the mercy of market prices, which hasn't been favourable for them. For AGL, they've pretty much had identical decreases in results as Origin, with underlying EBITDA down 10% since last year to $2 billion. This again is due to the decline in wholesale profit margins, which makes up a significant portion of their earnings. Finally, Energy Australia is not a public company, so we have no visibility of their company finances, but I'd imagine that they'd be in a very similar situation as the other two companies. The future of utilities companies like Origin and AGL are going to be extremely important to keep an eye on because they are generally the nation's biggest carbon emitters, and there will always be public pressure to reduce this. This is obviously bad for the immediate bottom line, but a healthy balance in investment and transition into renewables will still be worth it for them in the long term. For Origin, this will be a big transition, especially at the Eraring coal power station, where they are currently building Australia's biggest battery at 700 megawatts to store and support renewable energy long after coal burning has stopped. This is going to be 4 times bigger than the Tesla battery installed in South Australia and will use all of the existing infrastructure like transformers and power lines. This will definitely be helping their commitment to halve their emissions by 2032. Origin has also splashed out $500 million to buy a stake in Octopus Energy in the UK, which gives them access to the Kraken platform to interact with their customers to hopefully give them some cost savings in the immediate future. Now, despite all these great plans for the future, Origin will be facing some tough times ahead with 2021 guidance of a decline in EBITDA of around 10 to 20% with no fault of their own and just purely due to the lower demand in this economy. Now, for Australia's biggest greenhouse emitter, AGL is committing to become fully carbon neutral by 2050. And that means that the Liddell power plant will definitely be shutting down by 2022. By laws of supply and demand though, cutting off a huge chunk of supply will drive energy prices up, and that'll probably benefit Origin while it still has its power plants. On top of that, the government may force the Snowy Hydro Group to replace it with a gas power plant in the same region to try and keep prices down. So AGL is basically caught between a rock and a hard place in the immediate future, and you can see that now it's trying to diversify its business by branching out and offering internet and mobile services. Nonetheless, AGL is going to have some tough times ahead, and that's probably why its share price has tumbled even more than Origin. So that's my summary of the biggest utility companies in Australia. You can see that there's going to be some tough times ahead for all of them, and they will be under pressure to support the Paris Climate Agreement of limiting global warming. Without doubt, there's going to be a lot of money thrown at renewables in the coming decades, and if utility companies like Origin and AGL can get it right, then they might finally be able to turn around their share price, which has continued to dip since the pandemic first kicked in. AGL will be the first to watch as the Liddell power plant is closed, but Eraring will be next, and Origin will have to follow suit. But they do have the advantage of seeing what works and what doesn't for AGL, and that's probably why AGL is dipping more than Origin recently. Thanks so much for watching this video. I've really enjoyed making the comparison on miners and now utility companies. Now the next big challenge for me is to compare the big 4 banks. They are a lot more complicated to analyze since their business operations is a lot more complex, and I think I'm going to have a pretty tough time making this video, but I'll definitely give it a red hot go, so make sure to like this and subscribe to the channel as your way of showing support for more videos like this. It really makes a huge difference knowing that you found this video interesting and helpful and liking the video versus not letting the YouTube algorithm know, which really stops new viewers from discovering this channel. Anyway, I think I've rabbled on for long enough. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.